me. It's okay. You can hear me now, though. I believe you. Okay, yes, you can definitely hear me now. You can't hear the guests yet, but that's fine. I'm going to intro them in a second. Guys, welcome to episode 251 of the Falcoholic Live. As I was explaining to the guests, decided to revert everything back to my laptop settings, which, of course, since I'm no longer on my laptop, no longer actually at training camp, no longer function. So, that's why you weren't getting sound right off the top. But everything should be back in order now. Welcome back, everyone, to the Falcoholic Live. Back home for all of us. Of course, you can see joining me first off is Will McFadden at Will McFadden on Twitter. Will, how we doing?
Doing well, Kevin. Thank you for having me on. Very excited to talk training camp and Friday night's matchup against Miami.
Yeah, exciting stuff, and we definitely got a lot to look forward to there. Also joining us, of course, another special guest. We have Eric Robinson at _Eric_Robinson from ESPN himself. Eric Robinson. Eric, how we doing tonight?
I'm doing pretty good, man. How about yourself?
Good. Happy to have you back on. I did the thing where, I sent Eric a message to come on the show and then proceeded to not check to see if he was going to come on. And then he showed up anyway because he's a true professional. He doesn't even need me to confirm anything. So thank you for that, Eric. Thank you for saving me there. And of course,
Appreciate it.
We have my co-host Adnan Ikic at Say Which Way. Adnan, how are we doing tonight?
Doing well. Can't wait to talk about how Bijan Robinson is a third string running back. Is he a bust?
A bust? My column.
Terrible.
Wow. Yeah.
He's been a top 10 pick on a guy who's backing up Cordero Patterson.
Right.
Oh,
Can't even beat out our wide receiver or running back. That's crazy, right?
Can't believe it. I can't believe it. Yep. Why is he even here? Why are any of us here? We're all just energy, man.
Is Carlos Washington going to overtake Bijan on the depth chart?
Yeah, there you go. Hashtag my column. But yeah. All right, guys. Well, we got a lot to get to. Obviously, we're going to give you guys basically just our overall thoughts from the first couple weeks of Falcons training camp. And then, of course, get into these joint practices in Miami, which sound surprisingly positive for the Falcons, especially with concerns spent on the defensive line. The Falcons defensive line apparently looking very good. So that is something we haven't seen in a long time. So we will be able to enjoy talking about that as well. Welcome in, everyone. Before we get off and running here, let me bring you a word from today's sponsor, betonline.ag, your number one source for all your betting needs. You can get the latest odds, lines, and matchup reports for baseball, boxing, golf, and more. Perhaps you're feeling overly confident in these Falcons. We've given you all these glowing training camp reports, right? You could bet on Atlanta to win the NFC South. You could bet on Bijan Robinson to lead the NFL in whatever you want, I'm sure. They have all those props out there for you, whatever craziness you want to bet on. Hey, whatever you want to bet on, guys. BetOnline is your sports intel headquarters this season, as they've got you covered for all your insider sports wagering needs. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info, including live betting options and your favorite casino and card games you can play right from your home. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to get in on the action, and be sure to use our promo code Bleav, that's BLEAV, to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet online, where the game starts. All right. We've got a full house here. I know myself, Adnan, and Will were all at training camp, and Eric, I am sure, was observing very, very closely from afar. So we've all got takes, I imagine. I figured I'd just start us off sort of with our biggest takeaway from what we've seen, and I'll have the honor of going last. But Eric, I'll let you go first with this. What's your biggest overall takeaway from what you've seen so far from the Falcons in training camp?
There seems to be a different energy around this team. Last couple years, you kind of sort of felt like this team knew that they had some work to be done. And when I say team, I mean from the organization, from the front office down to the coaching staff, the players. They knew that there was some work that needed to be done with this particular team and reconstructing things from the Dan Quinn era. But right now, going into year 3 of the Arthur Smith tenure, there seems to be more of a reinvigorated energy around this team. I think they sense that they know they're a completely different team from last year. They're much more talented. from last year on both sides of the ball. And you're starting to see it a little bit in practices. You're starting to see it a little bit in Arthur Smith himself. His interviews look different. He looks, I can recall from the first couple years, just looking at a few of his headshots, the man looked like he got 3 hours of sleep a night the first 2 years. Like, he looked exhausted. He looked stressed. Now he looks refreshed. He looks like he knows he has something going here, and that type of energy has spread it from him all the way down to the team, and you see it pretty much every day in practice.
Yeah, that energy is infectious. I mean, you could see it in the press conference room too. Just how, like, there's a positive energy around this team, and you have to think that had something to do with, you know, Calais Campbell deciding to sign there and some other free agents deciding to sign there that we really didn't think the Falcons had much of a chance at. So I definitely think you're onto something with that, Eric. Let's go to Will McFadden next. Will, I know you were there the final day, I Bleav, or not the next. You were there Friday, right?
So I was there Friday and Saturday, week
Okay.
1, and then I was there Friday of week 2. And
Yes.
Adnan was there Saturday, right?
Okay, yes.
So yeah, no, but Eric, before I get to mine, which, spoiler alert, it's going to be the defensive line. So we'll put a pin in that for 1 second. And apologies, Adnan or Kevin, if that was going to be yours. But you reminded me of something, Eric, when I was, you know, covering the Falcons from 2017 to 2020 in that Dan Quinn era. There were a lot of players in the locker room that were high energy, that were, you know, very upbeat, that did kind of, as they like to say, like, bring the juice and all of that. But it was a more of a chaotic energy. And I feel like I saw much more rah-rah coaching, amp up from the coaching staff than I have at any point with Arthur Smith and his staff. It's very just like, go about your business. The expectation is there. You're running from drill to drill. You know where you're supposed to be, but the competition is coming more from the players and more internally and from the leaders, I think, inside of that locker room than it is from the coaching staff. And so I think that's also an immensely positive sign. And it speaks more to the overall culture shift specifically that I think separates Dan Quinn and Arthur Smith, because both, I think, established cultures, which is, you know, hard enough to do in the NFL, and both had clearly defined cultures. I think that's the key difference, is that the coaching staff brought that energy. Now you're getting it from the players. But to the defensive line, just up and down. I feel like depth-wise, night and day better, but even, you know, you're seeing in, and I don't know if it's the system. I think we'll learn not a lot about that in the preseason, but the first 4 weeks of the year, I think, is when we'll really be able to figure out, all right, is it players or is it system? But right now, whatever it is, it's working. You're seeing guys that, you know, I have to look down at the roster again to be like, who is this? Oh, Joe Gaziano. Like, he just absolutely destroyed the right tackle and set the edge that allowed the linebacker to come and fill it and just like stop the running back for a 2-yard loss. That's awesome. It's kind of the way that we saw like Jalen Dalton and Timmy Horn stand out last year, but that was more just because I think of the lack of front end talent on that group. And so it was like, oh, maybe they have something here. Now it's like, okay, the guys in the third team are making legitimate plays routinely. And so that is where the news coming out of Miami for joint practices and the defensive line continuing to play well now makes me think, okay, like, that is real. What we saw was not just, all right, maybe the offensive line is taking a little bit of time to get up to speed. This is a legitimately good unit. And again, I'm kind of curious to figure out more why. And I think we'll see that more in the regular season, but that's been my group so far.
Yeah, no, 100% agreement there. I think that is definitely one of the more popular ones that we'll talk about it more, obviously, when we get to the joint practices too. But it's been many a year since the Falcons defensive line sent another team's offensive line into like an existential crisis, like the Falcons have apparently done to the Miami Dolphins. I'm seeing like fans panicking, like Miami fans, like, oh God, our offensive line is so bad. Like, oh, we've been exposed, you know. It's
that
like...
quote from Mike McDaniel about like, if the goal is average, then like, yeah, sure, I'm pleased. That was awesome.
Yeah.
That's an amazing quote to hear about your defense.
Yeah, he's fun.
Not only that, but to hear the starting quarterback also give kudos to the defense as well for how they play. So that's something we're not used to around here, around these parts.
Yeah.
So that definitely kind of sort of caught me off guard a little bit.
Yeah, no, and it's like, I think there was definitely a section of fans that were like, oh, the Falcons offense is playing terribly, like what's going on, Desmond Ridder, sucks or whatever. And we were trying to tell people, like, honestly, like a lot of these throws are just being broken up by the defense. Like, it's not like it was a bad throw. It's not like the receiver ran a bad route. It was just like the defense made a great play. Maybe the defense actually is just good. Maybe that is a thing. But I think people have been so like burned by this defense being awful that they're like, oh, the offense can't make plays against this defense. Like, what are we doing? So maybe that was actually a sign of the defense. Yeah. So, well, Adnan, on that note, what's your takeaway? Or maybe you want to continue on this line of thought?
Yeah, I'm going to give two. One football related, one not football related that I'll touch on very quickly at the end. Because Will took the defensive line.
The low-hanging fruit, yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to diversify a little bit. Well, my fruit's also pretty low-hanging. I'm going to go with the secondary. Just because I think the defense overall won more days than they lost during training camp. I think we're all in agreement with that, both being there and reading all of the reports that were coming out of Flowery Branch. The secondary was stifling. Like the secondary was, there were some days where, none of the quarterbacks could literally get anything going. Like these wide receivers, these pass catchers were in absolute straitjackets, and none more so than the last day of training camp. Before the joint practices. I look at training camp as, when we get to preseason, like week 1, I stop referring to it as training camp because then after that it becomes more so like regular practices. But on Saturday, which was the last day before the joint practices, the secondary was just, they were picking up pass breakups like it was candy. I mean, like it felt like nothing that any of the quarterbacks could do was working at all. And I mean, I think Ridder went 8 for 16, according to Mike Rothstein's notes. Taylor Heineke did have some completions, but, I wouldn't say that any of the quarterbacks had a good day on Saturday. And there were some days that were just like that. In 9 days, the defense got 8 interceptions. And I know because I was running the interception counter day in and day out. And I'm counting this as just 7-on-7s and 11-on-11s, not even counting the 1-on-1s where Clark Phillips got an interception against Drake London. Jalen Hawkins got 2 on the first 2 days of camp, and then every other pick was intercepted by. It was 7 different players. Each had at least 1 interception in the secondary. It wasn't even just one guy just absolutely dominating. It was Mike Abernathy, Clark Phillips, Richie Grant, Breon Borders, Jesse Bates, and DeMarco Hillams. On the last day, there were 3 interceptions, plus I think at least 7 other pass breakups, which weren't interceptions. It just felt like Atlanta's wide receivers just could hardly get any separation throughout camp against the secondary. And I think it just is a testament to the depth that Atlanta has built up, not just on the defensive line, but on the secondary as well, to where, you have someone like a Jalen Hawkins now as your backup safety. I think he's one of the better backup safeties in the NFL. I really like Mike Abernathy as a backup safety as well. D. Alford isn't even a name that I mentioned so far, but he's, as of now, the starting nickelback. He also had a very strong camp. So, kudos to the secondary. And it really is, like, Kevin, like you mentioned, sometimes it wasn't just, oh yeah, Desmond Ridder is terrible. Maybe it just is, yeah, like this secondary was just that good. And the other thing I want to mention is the fan support. It was I want to say the 2 Saturdays of training camp, the one last week and the one on day 9. Those were the 2 most populated training camps that I've seen since 2017. And I've been going every year, either down on the field with the credential or, up on the hill with the rest of the fans. And you can feel a different type of energy, not just within the roster and within the coaching staff itself, but you can feel a different type of energy within the fan base. The line was so long. I pulled up on Saturday, and you can find it on my Twitter at 8:30 a.m., which was, when the doors were just opening, a full hour before camp. The line was so long. I literally went and recorded, went by and just recorded just how many people were there. And, this is a video. This was like a 15-second video of me driving, just like seeing how many people were in line waiting for a practice that was going to start an hour from now. And then remember last week, the first Saturday, Kevin, there was, an hour into practice, there were still people in line checking into the facility and checking, into the hill that were still in line out waiting outside. Like, the fan base has bought in, the fan base is ready. And, this fan base is ready to explode. The team, the franchise just needs to give them a reason to do so.
Yeah. The fans are ready for this team to be good. For God's sake, we're ready for this team to be good. Like, and I think, people underestimate like that. It's been a while. This team hasn't had a winning record since 2018. Some point in 2018, I think they had a winning record at some point in 2018, maybe. But I know 2017 was the last winning season. So, I mean, it's been a really long time.
2018, they never had a winning record.
Okay, so it was 2017.
The last winning record was when they were 10-6 in 2017. 2018, they started out 1-1. They lost the season opener. Then they beat the Eagles on Sunday Night Football. Yeah. And then they lost the next few games after that.
Yeah, I remember the false hope of that season for sure. But hopefully this season's not false hope like that. Hopefully this is much more real hope. No. Yeah.
Also, my mistake. That was 2019. 2018 was when they lost to the Eagles on Thursday night to start the season, when they picked up all those injuries to Deion Jones, Keanu Neal, right away to start the season.
Oh yeah, it was catastrophic safety injuries. So, who did we play? Was that the Jordan Richards year? That's a deep cut for you guys. Yeah,
was a deep cut. Yeah, I remember that they scored 39 against the Bengals and lost in week 3. Week 2, Drew Brees got away from 2 defenders. He spun away from 2 defenders to tie the game. That was week 3. Week 4 was the Bengals.
I still can't believe Jordan Richards was the worst safety in the league, and they continue to roll him out. It was oh, okay, can we really not do better? Can we not we really can't do better than this? Man, brutal stuff. Thankfully, not anticipating those issues this year. But yeah, I mean, I think you guys covered a lot of the good stuff. I mean, I think maybe another thing to mention is that I think the wide receiver depth maybe looks a little bit better than people were expecting, and that obviously Drake London looks really good. Kyle Pitts back to full health, essentially. That's very good. And then Mac Hollins, I think, was really impressive, both on and off the field. Mac Hollins is a treasure. And, yeah. Did you have something to add, Eric, as well? Sorry.
I think on the back end of that wide receiver group, there's a real battle going on. And I think what's interesting about it is that a lot of the guys from, Kadero Hodge, Penny Hart, Josh Ali, Frank Darby, all these guys have special teams experience. So it's not a situation where it's you have a receiver and you're telling him, hey, you're gonna have to cut your teeth on special teams in order to make this roster. All these guys have that experience, and all these guys have made plays offensively this offseason, especially Frank Darby, who's a 3-time training camp champion. That's what I like to call him. This is his world every single offseason. But I agree with you, Kevin. The depth at receiver, it's going to make it very hard when it's time to cut down to 53. And it's been a while since we've had depth in various spots across the roster, not just 1 or 2 positions. Literally, you're seeing it now.
But the thing I wonder about with the receiver depth specifically is kind of the same way that I framed the improvement of the defensive line depth compared to where it was last year. Is that just where the wide receivers are, where you just named all of the players you named, and they're all if we were drafting in fantasy football, they'd all be 5th round, 6th round, 7th round, later on guys, and not these where you'd want your 2nd or 3rd receiver kind of coming off the board earlier on in that draft. these are later on in the bench type of guys, and maybe we're just drawing that comparison because they're all of kind of like that C plus caliber, or are they legitimately going to be like, a B level third, fourth receiver on this group? Like that's where I think Kadarius Hodge can be that kind of like, if we're talking receiver, wide receiver specifically, I think he can emerge as kind of that third guy, because Arthur Smith has, I think, hinted at that in some ways. But yeah, I'm just curious to see what actually pans out.
Right.
Yeah.
Same here. Again,
I mean, in fairness to the receivers, though, Atlanta's wide receiver 5 is more like a wide receiver 6 on another roster.
It's more like a wide receiver 9 or 10.
Yeah.
Like it's literally like Kyle Pitts, Drake London, Cordero Patterson, Bijan Robinson, Jonnu Smith, Mac Hollins, and then like, and Bijan Robinson is in there. So Mac Hollins is like 8th. So that's what we're like starting out at.
And I mean, I'd put Kadarius Hodge in there as well toward the end. You mentioned Cordero Patterson?
Yep. I think he's essentially like your third receiving option right now. And Bijan is probably 4th.
Yeah.
And then I expect that to totally flip at some point during the season. But
didn't even mention Scotty Miller, who also brings plenty of special teams experience and some juice in the deep passing game as well. So
I haven't been sold on him in camp so far. That's why.
That's fair. I think it's one of those situations where, again, his experience could definitely pay off in the long run at some point, especially when it's time to trim down the roster. But, again, like I said, it's a battle royal there. And I think a couple guys like Frank Darby, Kadarius Hodge as well, it's going to be hard to cut them.
I think Hodge is safe just because of the comments from Arthur Smith to open up camp. He talked about how they underutilized Kadarius Hodge, how he's going to have more of a role this season. And I think he's just that important as your best special teams gunner. I think he's safe as that wide receiver 4. But that wide receiver 5 battle is a bloodbath right now.
Yeah.
I mean, literally every single day from camp, there has been someone in this battle that has stuck out on a different individual day. Remember, it started with Zay Malone. He took that quote-unquote little early lead. And, Penny Hart was also playing very well before the pads came on. Then when the pads came on, Frank Darby just started stacking days. And Frank Darby was just – Frank Darby showed out from Monday to Saturday. Like, legitimately, I would say he impressed me more than anyone on that second week. You had J.J. Arcega-Whiteside have a very good day in there. I think it was on Tuesday or Wednesday. Slade Bolden on Saturday had his best day. He was catching everything coming his way. And then in joint practices, not today, but yesterday, Josh Ali had those 2 very long receptions, including that 50-yard touchdown. So it's literally been a different guy almost every single day, just like stepping up and sort of staking his claim and saying, hey, I'm not going anywhere either. So this is the battle to watch for me throughout preseason.
Yeah, it's definitely probably the tightest one, because I mean, good luck predicting who's going to win it at this stage. I mean, I think we've seen good things from all the guys you mentioned. Frank Darby, I think maybe you'd have to say he has the slight edge right now.
I give Darby the lead right now.
Yeah.
I'd put Darby in the lead right now.
I really think it's got like the preseason games are going to determine this, because we saw in like 2018, it seemed as though Reggie Davis had it all but locked up, and then in that last preseason game, like literally let a job slip through his fingers. So we've got a long way to go. So far.
In fairness, that's not good for the content. Just saying, we need to wait and be patient is just
no. We got to make bold predictions immediately. We
got to throw out the takes. People want the takes.
Yeah.
Right
People need takes.
But no, I definitely agree. It's gonna the preseason will weigh the heaviest. I mean, remember what was it? Bernard Reedy a few years ago. Was dominating in camp. Austin Trammell before the pads came on was just the guy.
R.I.P. the Austin Trammell dream. Yeah.
And I think it'll come down to that last preseason game too. Like I think that preseason week 3, when Drake London, when Mac Hollins aren't playing, that's going to be the one where most people will be like, "Yeah, who cares? It's the third preseason game," and we'll be here intently, just like analyzing every snap
Yes.
to see who's going to take that slight edge in this wide receiver 5 battle.
Yep. We're going to analyze how many targets Zay Malone versus Keelan Harris get in the fourth quarter for our practice squad projections, because we're true sickos. That's why you guys are watching the show, I'm sure. But, that's why we're all here, right? Because we're sickos. So, well, let's get into these joint practices a little bit, because I know Will's on a little bit of a time crunch, and I know that's kind of the topic du jour, right, is these joint practices. And things are looking pretty good so far from what I've heard. Will, what do you think about the news coming out of Miami so far?
Yeah, I think that, first and foremost, this is just a great opportunity to see a totally different group of players and totally different skill set. And, the Falcons, we talk about offensively, them being such a unique team in this league. Well, part of the downside of that, and maybe the other edge of that sword, is like, your defense is going against a very kind of unique offensive group, one that does not have the speed of a team like Miami, and you're going to run up against teams that have that type of speed. And I would argue this team doesn't even have the route running of like a New Orleans or something like that. So it's just a good opportunity to give your guys a different flavor. And they will get that a couple more times in the preseason, but this is get tested one day, come back the next day, see how you adjust, see how they adjust. It's a really nice working session. So I was very encouraged by what I saw and heard from, the joint practices. I think that Arthur Smith today was very complimentary of Desmond Ritter's decision-making, and also his, really just his consistency so far in year 2. And I think that is key going up against a defense that you've not started to get tells on. When you're going up against the same guys, you kind of understand, all right, he likes to do this when he's doing this, or you just get a sense, and here you can't fake it. So for your quarterback to kind of be getting some positives, that's real. We already talked about the defensive line, but that's been huge. The secondary with Jalen Hawkins, I know that there's been some clips shared by Dolphins media people and all of that with like Tyreek Hill toasting, just various dudes. Like, that's going to happen. What did
Especially
you
Trey Flowers? That's just mean. That's just
right,
mean.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, all right, put him in a boxing ring. Let's see what happens then. But yeah, this just happens to be a football field where he gets to run around this dude in circles and then run off like it was insane. But I was not surprised by that. I expected that to happen. To hear some of the comments from Miami about how their offense wasn't in the rhythm that it necessarily is used to being or expects to be in was very, very heartening. And so I went into joint practices really kind of on the fence, because I've been fooled before early in training camps many a time, saying, hey, this team looks good, this unit looks great. And then you get in a preseason game and they get their asses kicked by like the other team. And you're like, well, okay. So still just one part of the process, but I like what I saw so far.
Yeah. And that's a very good point. It's been, we've seen a lot of mirage type stuff over the past few seasons, and I remember
I thought Eric Saubert was going to be a Hall of
God.
Famer.
Yes,
like I literally turned to the director of Falcons communications and I was like, "Get that man a gold jacket right now." And he never sued. Like,
never. Poor guy.
Although he's still in the league.
He's
baby.
still
Let's
in the
go.
league. Yeah, and I know. I know someone mentioned that
like
Jason
GameStop
Gaines.
and AMC, we are rebounding.
You're getting it to the moon. Yeah. Well, no, Jason Gaines also mentioned that Austin Trammell's still on the Rams roster. So my Austin Trammell takes have not yet been invalidated entirely, but we're getting there.
I think it's interesting when it comes to these joint practices. You kind of sort of have to be careful as far as who or where you're getting your coverage from, because if you ask or if you talk to a certain select of Miami Dolphins fans or writers, they'll tell you that they just won the AFC East this past couple.
Oh, you mean Omar Kelly, like on Twitter, who
Omar Kelly, Joe Shad,
dominated
guys
today.
Yeah, they're not. But then you go to a neutral side, like a guy like Cameron Wolf from NFL Network, and like yesterday, he told you, and it was I love the point that he brought up. It was very interesting, the contrast in styles between the two teams on the first day of the joint practice. You have the speed and athleticism from the Dolphins, but you have the size and the strength and the physicality from the Falcons. And he pointed out and said, yeah, the Dolphins, as expected, were able to make plays. I mean, in one-on-one and 7-on-7 are made for offenses. Okay, so when you put a guy like Trey Flowers on Tyreek Hill in one-on-ones, Tyreek is going to win that 10 times out of 10 in all likelihood. Don't care about the plays he made against Trey Flowers. It's supposed to happen. If they didn't, I'll be surprised. Yeah. However, I find it hilarious when you add 10 extra players on the field on each side of the ball, how you didn't necessarily see or hear the big plays that were given up from on the defense at that point. It changes everything. And I thought it was interesting to see that he pointed out also, yes, the Dolphins won their fair share of big plays, but in the trenches on both sides of the ball is where the Falcons won and where they were able to cut their teeth on both days. Very interesting. Again, not used to hearing that about the Falcons, that they're able to win the trenches on both sides of the ball in back-to-back practices against another particular team, a Super Bowl favorite in the eyes of many at that.
Yeah. It's a spicy team they got down there in Miami, and
right.
Yeah, if Tyreek Hill was getting locked up by Trey Flowers, I'd be like, all right, it's time to hang him up, Tyreek. Like,
you have a problem. Right?
It's time to avoid Tyreek Hill in fantasy drafts.
Yeah, it's time. I would be really concerned.
Although apparently Tyreek did have a play today where, got to the end zone, then he just started dancing, like Josh Kendall, on Twitter. He just started dancing until a defender came by, and then he just did a backflip. And it's
I read that too.
Yeah.
So disrespectful. So rude.
Yeah, I appreciate that kind of disrespect. I'm not gonna It reminds me of old Deshaun Jackson back in the day with Mike Vick and the Eagles.
Good
stuff.
But
I'm with you on that one. I'm so sick of the word finesse. I'm so sick of this team. This has been a finesse team for a decade at this point. Even that 2016 run where they got to the Super Bowl, that offensive line wasn't really dominant the way
by design.
Yeah, they were lighter. It was that zone blocking scheme, and you beat other teams with with that versatility and with that scheme and with really good help, because that 2016 team, that O-line started every single game together, which was very lucky. But this team has not dominated the trenches in so long. It's been a decade since they dominated the trenches on the offensive line, if you don't count last year where they dominated in the run game. But it's been since after the last year before last season was 2012, where you had Todd McClure, you had some of these guys, you had that amazing line. Yeah. You had that amazing offensive line in that Matt Ryan era, the start of the Matt Ryan era, where you had Blaylock, Dahl, McClure, Sam Baker, and I missed Tyson Clabo. And those guys were just fucking bullies. And I remember the Giants ahead of the 2010 playoffs talking about, they were crying about how dirty those guys played, and Atlanta's O-line is dirty, blah blah blah. I miss that. I miss that.
Let's go back to that. Yeah.
In the trenches. And post 2012, it's been it's been finesse. It's been it's third and short, it's fourth and short. We're gonna line up in the shotgun because there's no hope that we're gonna convert this. And on the defensive line, I legitimately just don't remember the last time the defensive line has been overpowering against other teams. I mean, you had Grady Jarrett, and that's it. You haven't had a legitimate pass rusher since John Abraham. And I mean, I know Vic Beasley had that all-pro year in 2016, but he was also very lucky that season, converting a lot of his pressures into sacks. It seems like it's a new era of Falcons football. I hope it's a new era of Falcons football. And it's been something that we've been pounding the table for years of, let's invest in the trenches. They finally started to invest in the fucking trenches. And I mean, I don't care. I've said it on the show in the past, and I'll say it again. No matter how analytical the movement gets, no matter how pass happy, no matter how explosive offenses get, football at its core inherently, at least in my opinion, is a game that's won in the trenches. Right. If you're able to block and if you're able to tackle, you're going to have a really good chance. We saw that with the Eagles last year. They had an absolutely dominant offensive and defensive line, and that propelled them nearly to a Super Bowl title. I think they win that Super Bowl if Jalen Hurts doesn't just drop the ball at one point, which was recovered for a fumble. And this is the first time, like you guys mentioned, that we're actually hearing the Falcons, even in a setting like one of these joint practices, where they went out there and they just bullied the other team. Like normally it's us on the other end of, us getting bullied, and we're the smaller team and we have to be more finesse and we have to be more versatile. Fuck that. I want to go out there and I want to punish other teams. Like I want to be the team that is pushing the other teams around for once. And we haven't experienced that, and we have not enjoyed that in well over a decade. And I'm hoping that this is a sign of things to come.
Yeah.
2014 Mike Smith is shedding a tear right now at that.
Granted, this was an offensive line that saw its fair share of inconsistencies last year. I'm talking about the Dolphins' offensive line, of course. But there was still a level of expectation coming into this particular season, especially with the health of Tua. They're still viewed in the eyes of many as a team that's going to make a deep playoff run. They may, but to see in back-to-back days reporters saying, "Hey, this Dolphins offensive line, man, they're on the ground a little bit too much for Tua, for a guy that needs to stay healthy, a guy that needs to stay upright." It has not been very an encouraging sign the past couple of days.
Oh yeah.
So
thanks, Will. Yep, appreciate it. Sorry, Will had to drop out, guys. He's at Will McFadden. Bleav in Falcons. Check it out. All right, please continue, Eric. Yeah.
But just to see that for a team that's having that expectation, and again, you're going in. I think I don't know how many times it's been stressed enough. The health of Tua this season and how imperative it is to their success. And again, back-to-back joint practice days. Austin Jackson is on the ground.
Liam Eichenberg is getting destroyed. Yes.
Liam Eichenberg is getting tossed around. It's not encouraging going into even preseason week 1, let alone regular season week 1. So again, it feels good to see and hear that. And this is the unit that didn't even have Calais out there. They got him back. He's off PUP, but he hasn't even been out there. Yeah. But yet you're able to see the work of Ryan Nielsen at this point. I think you're starting to see his presence a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, you look at like a guy like Zach Harrison too, who I don't think any of us had massive expectations for in year 1, and he's just no, not at all. Like, I mean, I think we were all hopeful, like, oh, he's a traits guy. I mean, the traits are through the roof. Like, I mean, this is probably Calais Campbell's understudy. Maybe in a couple years we have something here. He's been like one of the most productive edge rushers, like, period. Like, I mean, obviously going against not the starters most of the time, but still, like, I mean, it's impressive for him to be flashing so early, and you have to think a lot of it is, this is Ryan Nielsen putting his stamp on the defense and saying, like, look, we're gonna get these defensive linemen, we're gonna coach them up, and that's just such a big boost, because it used to be that, like, the Falcons really needed to get finished products on the D-line because they weren't going to develop anybody. Like, it was not going to happen. Right. They'd missed over and over and over again trying to do that. And now it's like, well, maybe we can take some shots. You look at Taquan Graham. I mean, even Ade Ogundeji has been, like, actually playing decently in training camp. And
he has.
Yeah, he has. So, and I think we talked about it before, like, he's probably a better fit as a 4-3 end anyway. So that may be good for him just in general. But yeah.
And the thing about Ryan Nielsen is he's a hell of a teacher along that defensive line. Like, you can tell that at his core, he's a teacher first and foremost. And we saw it in New Orleans. Like, those defensive lines in New Orleans were fucking terrifying for years, since 2017 on. Like, that has been what has powered the Saints to all of those deep division titles, because that Drew Brees started slowing down. The offense was still good under Sean Payton, because he was scheming some stuff up, but that team, the strength of that team was its front seven for years. And that's the reason why Ryan Nielsen today is Atlanta's offensive coordinator. And I remember talking to Lorenzo Carter after one of those practices, and he just had nothing but glowing reviews about Ryan Nielsen, talking about just how much attention to detail Ryan Nielsen puts into every single play. Like Lorenzo Carter said that Nielsen takes him aside and he talks about, he talks about the placement of his hands. He talks about, the placement of his eyes. He talks about literally the most minute possible details that you can imagine. And, he's just giving him these tips and these suggestions and these lessons to give him as much of an advantage as he possibly can. And I feel like that's something that we haven't really had as much of. I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't want to diss on, Dan Quinn too much because the Falcons defense in 2017 under Marquand Manuel was very good. But outside of that 2017 season, this defense has been, for the most part, dog shit for the past decade or so.
Yep.
And I feel like the defensive coordinators haven't really been as hands-on as what we're going to see from Ryan Nielsen moving forward. And I think that especially for these younger guys, they're going to be all the better for it.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right about that. And apologies, Moonstar, I didn't actually see your donation, so apologies about that. Moonstar with the $5, thank you so much, buddy. Thank you so much. He says, after Drake London was the 5th string wide receiver on the depth chart last year and Kyle Pitts wasn't the starter at tight end in preseason, I am fully convinced that Arthur Smith doesn't even use depth charts, and you're absolutely right. Pay no attention to the depth charts. It does not matter.
None.
It might, it literally doesn't matter at all. Yeah. I think Arthur Smith likes to just troll with those depth charts. Like, it's just a joke.
Bijan's going to play, ladies and gentlemen. Just don't worry.
He's definitely click it for content when it publishes on the Falcoholic.
Oh, yes, definitely. Yeah. Just to see it. Yeah, that's all. Yeah.
It's the whole rookie way of he needs to earn his way up the depth chart.
What's impressive? The past couple of days of joint practices, he's had 2 or 3 touchdowns, and it hasn't even been talked about. That's to tell you everything you need to know about what's been going on in Miami the past couple of days. The fact that Bijan has looked like Bijan, but is still getting overshadowed by the physicality of the defensive line, the secondary that's out here making plays left and right, the offensive line that's pushing around a very talented Dolphins defensive line as well. So that should tell you everything you need to know. Shout out. I definitely want to give a shout out to Desmond Ridder as well. Didn't have a great day 1 in joint practice. Came back day 2, went 4 for 4 in the red zone.
Yeah.
That's what I need. That's what I need, Ridder. That's what I need right there.
Just the improvements. And you look at Tua, and it's Tua hasn't been doing great in those periods either. Picked off by Hawkins today. It's so Desmond Ridder doesn't look out of place next to Tua, who I think a lot of people, and I'm not a Tua hater or a huge Tua fan either, but I think Tua's still easily a top 15 quarterback. I mean, easily. So
the guy was in the MVP conversation last year.
Yeah, exactly. When he got hot, before he got hurt, and he's been on some hot streaks. So it's not like the Dolphins offense is shining and the Falcons offense is in the dirt. These are 2 extremely different looking offenses, which is kind of funny. Dolphins very much 11, line them up, knock them down, sort of, passing focused attack. But it's also a Shanahan style offense, and the Falcons are going to go up against, quite a few of these over the course of the season. And you're going to need to know how to beat this type of offense to get past San Francisco in the playoffs and stuff like that too. So obviously no one does it like Kyle Shanahan. So they're all sort of, versions of his offense. But I think it's a good sign that this very popular offense, the Falcons defense, is so far playing pretty well against it. And I'm excited to see how this whole thing shakes out. I think that the defense has a chance to actually be competent, like 15th or better. And I know that sounds crazy, but if you listen to what we've talked about year over year, defense is actually quite volatile year to year. You can have big shifts in how defenses perform, because a lot of stuff that happens on defense is turnovers. If you get a lot of turnovers, you're going to have a better defense, but turnovers are one of the most random things in the NFL. So if you get a lot of turnovers, yeah. So defense is variable year over year. It does fluctuate a lot. Now, typically the good defenses will still be good and the bad defenses will still be bad, but there's a lot of fluctuation. Like the number one defense could be 12th the next year and it wouldn't really shock anyone. It doesn't mean they were bad. They just they weren't elite anymore. And it just, a lot of stuff can happen to change that. Offense tends to be much more consistent year over year and make those more incremental gains. So, we're really hoping for this offense to take that step to be permanently in the top 10. I think they were 15th overall last year. Obviously great running the ball, but the passing game held them back. So I think we're hoping for them to take that step into the top 10 on offense. And then on defense, if they could just get to average like 16th, that would be a huge step from where they've been basically every year except 2017. And, this style of offense and having a good defense behind it, or even an average one, you can win a lot of games that way with that sort of classic limit possessions, smother the opponent and just grind it out type of style. I don't necessarily think that's what Arthur Smith like long-term wants. I think he wants this to be like Tennessee was, at its peak, where they were just, bashing you with Derrick Henry and throwing the ball over your head. And they were putting up, one of the top offenses in the NFL that year, definitely the most efficient. So I think they want to have that where the offense just takes over and then they can sort of close out with the run game and a good defense. And I don't know if we're quite to that level yet. So we're probably going to need more contribution from the defense over the next few years while this thing gets really fired up. But I don't know. What do you guys think? You think the offense is closer to being finished or the defense? I mean, I think it's the offense probably closer, but they did spend a lot on the defense this year. So
I think the offense is definitely closer, for sure. I mean, this, at least in the skill position department, from Drake, Kyle, Cordero, along with the offensive line, those guys have had time to work together. They've had a full season together intact. Ritter did not see the field until late last year, but again, he was still in the system. He was learning and picking up the system and learning things along the way. I think the offense right now is probably closer, but again, it's still an encouraging sign to see that, with that being the case, the defense has been the talk of the last 2 days of joint practices. So this defense still has some things to show a little bit, and we'll wait and see how this, at least in the secondary, we'll wait to see how the secondary truly looks when Okudah is back, when Clark Phillips is back, which again has been another positive sign to see that secondary unit make plays the way that they did without those two guys being on the field. So to answer your question, Kevin, yeah, I think the offense right now is at a point where they're probably a little bit more advanced, but I don't think that defense is that far away. I don't think they're trailing that far.
Yeah, they made a lot of strides. Yeah, but yeah, I'm curious what you have to say too, Adnan. Yeah.
I would definitely, I would agree that it's the offense, but it should be the offense, just given how much they've invested. And I'm not talking about the money in free agency. A lot of that went toward the defense for a reason, and that reason is, out of the last 6 first-round picks that this team has had, 5 of them have been offensive players who are currently on the roster. Even more so if you take it back to 2018, which was when Calvin Ridley was a first-rounder. And, that 2019 year, I'm counting both Caleb McGarry and Chris Lindstrom as first-rounders because they were both taken in the first round. But you've had 3 straight years where you had a skill position player taken in the top 10. Your first 2 picks this season were both spent on offensive players. And like I said, dating back to 2019, you have spent 1 first-round pick on defense, and that was A.J. Terrell, who is, a stalwart on this defense. It was a very good pick. But, yeah, it's the offense, and I would hope that it would be the offense, just given how much of a premium draft investment you've been spending on these offensive players. I legitimately think that this offense, I would say, just a couple pieces away from being like legitimately complete. And yeah. I mean, the only issue is one of those pieces is quarterback. Don't attack me. I'm not
noted
saying
Desmond Ritter hater.
I'm not saying that Ritter's bad. I'm just saying that he's unproven. I'm saying that I'm not going to go into this year saying, oh yeah, like the Falcons have their franchise quarterback. The Falcons have, the guy, at the quarterback position. We don't know that yet. And I'm looking forward to watching Desmond Ridder in the preseason. I hope that Desmond Ridder does play on Friday. I would hope that Arthur Smith doesn't decide to just bench him for 2 of the 3 preseason games, because he's probably not going to play in the last one. I think that he does need the reps, and I'm excited to watch how he progresses in advance of this year. But yeah, I would say probably quarterback is a question mark. Outside of quarterback, maybe maybe you could use another wide receiver. Just like in the bigger picture of things. And outside of that, possibly center is a little bit of a question mark long term, although we have high hopes for Drew Dahlman. But yeah, I think the offense is very, very close.
Yeah. And I know people are clamoring for Troy Anderson talk, and we'd be remiss if we didn't mention Anderson. He was flashing in training camp, but I think against the Dolphins, he has 2 picks already or something like that. He's been showing out. And we've talked about Troy Anderson as the true wild card player of this defense this year, where it's if he hits, and reaches what we think he can be, he could totally transform the defense because of how versatile he is and everything he can do. Yes.
I just read Dylan's. Read Dylan's.
It's throwing me off. But
no. What I missed.
Oh no! There was a bit where we were calling Desmond Ridder Desmond Mitter, but we were actually recording in the locker room or adjacent to it, so we were pretty worried that actually someone was hearing us say that. I think we said it kind of loud. So yeah.
I actually said it very loud, and I think the room we were in was it was adjacent to the locker room. So I just immediately caught myself and was all right, I can't be talking like this, like I'm at home. When the Falcons are being so generous with their facilities with us. So yeah, it was definitely a bit. I'm not going to call him Desmond Mitter yet, although if it happens this year, I will pull that out.
Yep, I've got that picture ready to go the second you do. So it's a great pick, whoever clipped that off. But yeah, Troy Anderson definitely been one of the more impressive players, it sounds like, and obviously I'm a huge Troy Anderson fan. Shout out to Bozeman, Montana State. Let's go. But
he's the wild card of the defense, right? I would say so.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I would say his production, his elevation as a second year linebacker is pretty important to this defense and whatever level of success that they find themselves on this year. I think if he's able to elevate his game and truly take those steps forward, man, I'm telling you, this defense can truly benefit from having that type of freak athlete on the field.
Yeah,
at middle line.
And yeah, you're exactly right. And it's everybody's oh, linebacker, it's not that valuable, it's not that important. But getting a really good one is still really important, because you look at the best defenses, and they've got that linebacker right in the middle. You think about Fred Warner right now. You think about Kuechly in his prime. Levante David in his prime.
Bobby Wagner.
Yep, Bobby Wagner.
Kobe Dean.
Yeah, Nakobe Dean has been showing out so much that the Eagles had to go out and sign 2 veteran linebackers behind him.
Yeah, both the veteran linebackers. I thought I had pegged for the Falcons. So thanks Eagles for taking those guys. Yeah.
Funny how that works, right, Adnan?
Yep. The Falcons don't want to win. If they did want to win, they would have taken Nakobe Dean. They would have taken Jordan Davis in the first round last year.
Darnell Washington. Yeah. We passed on Darnell Washington. Yeah. So
we need some guys with championship pedigree.
Yeah.
I don't remember Troy Anderson winning an NCAA title.
That's true. But we did warn people that they filled their quota for dogs for 10 years when they drafted Fitzpatrick and Justin Schaefer.
Fitzpatrick looked good, by the way. He had a touchdown today. He's looked good in camp. He legitimately, I'd peg him in. I'd pencil him in for. Not yet. He's fighting Parker Hesse for that tight end 4 spot right now.
Oh, they're keeping 5 tight ends on. They're doing it. Yeah.
Oh, they're keeping 5. They're keeping 8. They'll make room for 8.
They'll make room if they can.
Did you guys see the clip of Fitzpatrick's touchdown today?
No, yeah, they're too fucking small. Quote from Desmond.
You're right. I was here to point that out. Did you hear what was being said? Yeah. I got a general idea as far as who that was coming from.
No, that was Ridder. It was definitely Ridder.
That's definitely Ridder. Ritter's out there yelling that defenders are too small. Oh my, okay, Desmond, I see what you're doing here. I'll take that. That's the confidence that I need from him.
I love the skyscrapers. The skyscraper offense. I'm a big fan because it's just like every single person out there is like, and then occasionally you'll get Scotty Miller, but like
Cordero pointed out after practice today, he was being interviewed by the NFL Network. He pointed out that there's like 5 or 6 guys in the skill position group right now that are like 6'2", 210 or bigger. That's at that Ritter has at his disposal, and that puts you at a certain place in the league. Not a lot of teams can say that. Now I know where the game is right now. Everyone loves speed and quickness, but this team right now, we saw a little bit of it last year, and if you can't pay attention to it now, this team is trying to punch you in the mouth in every position. It doesn't matter. Running back, we saw yesterday. Of course, Dolphins fans felt like their DBs were playing well, but I thought their DBs was holding on for dear life yesterday when they had to go up against Kyle Pitts and Matt Collins and Drake. And I think that's something you're going to see on Sundays where defenses are like, man, these guys are tough. These guys are physical. And that's the identity that Arthur Smith is trying to bring to this team on both sides of the ball. They're trying to kick your teeth in for 4 quarters, and I don't mind that whatsoever.
Drake London in a post-practice interview was talking just about that, and he said that I mean the defense is helping them out. They're helping the offense out because he said that he's never faced a defense like this in his life that he faced in camp. He said that they really make it feel uncomfortable for you and that you really have to enjoy that discomfort. And, he said that they're going to go out there and they're going to play physical. I think the quote he used, and, it may not be fully correct, but he said they're going to run right through your face. And when asked to describe this team in one word, use the word ferocious. So I think the offense is definitely sort of relishing that identity a little bit. They want to go out there and they want to be the team that punishes the opposing team. They want to go out there and they want to, they want to make you mentally yield, where you get into that fourth quarter and it kind of goes back to, some of those Tennessee days where the Titans under Arthur Smith had that really physical, very strong, borderline dirty offensive line. And then you had Derrick Henry in the fourth quarter where nobody wanted to fucking, tackle Derrick Henry, who's the size of a linebacker. So I feel like Arthur Smith definitely wants to establish that identity where, when the game really gets into crunch time, the other team just wants no part of it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm excited.
Go ahead, Kevin.
No, I'm just excited to see this like in action. Like, I mean, it's nice. Like, people don't realize when you have a good defense, I think it makes your offense better too, because you get to practice against that every day. Whereas, if your defense sucks, then it's like, like beating up on a defense that's not good isn't going to help you get any better as an offense. It's just going to make you the same. Right. So, but please, whatever you had next, Eric.
I was just going to say, you pointed out that this team is starting to play a little ferocious. And it's definitely starting to be a little physical in practice. I'm pretty sure the Falcons practices might be a little too intense for the Washington Commanders because they don't like any type of intensity. They want things scaled back and easy for them, for a team that hasn't won a damn thing in so long. But hey, I digress. My bad.
It was such a pathetic thing, too. It was such a
pathetic It was.
Eric the enemy came here, and it's a bit
he
too
was mean to me.
Yeah. Bro, is that not some tattletale elementary school type stuff? Like, not only for a team that's coming off the heels of the Dan Snyder era, okay? For a team that hasn't really won much of anything, they haven't done a ton, the last 10, 15 years or whatever. For them to not only go behind the back of Eric Bieniemy, but go behind the back of Eric Bieniemy to the head coach.
Yeah, rude.
Basically, to tell on him for the most part. That's what you're tattletelling. Like, he's being too hard. Like, what?
Two things. Two things. One, Eric Bieniemy, comes from a Super Bowl team. Like you would think that nobody knows better than Eric Bieniemy about just how much intensity you need, to become a winner. Like, Eric Bieniemy is a fucking champion. He was an offensive coordinator. He's a 2-time Super Bowl champion, 3-time AFC champion as an OC. And 2, what the fuck is Ron Rivera doing admitting that, to the media? It's like
it's
Ron
a big
Rivera,
story.
he has this tendency. I love Ron Rivera, like personally, like as a person. Ron Rivera is a very nice man. He seems like a very nice man, but I think he has this tendency to just talk to the media a bit too much. Like that is such bad semantics for your football team to go out there and be like, oh yeah, the guys told me this. Like nobody even asked you to do that.
Yeah, please don't say that. Yeah, no, you don't need to.
If I was Bieniemy, day one of training camp, I would have walked out there with my rings on and said, "You guys want these? Then do what I say. Plain and simple.
Yep.
You guys want these? You guys want to win ball games and have a couple of these on your fingers? Do what I say." It obviously worked with Patrick Mahomes, so now it's not going to work with you guys. You guys are it's too hard for you guys. But what do we do? What's happened to the game? If that's the case,
soft.
Right?
Yeah.
What's happened to the game? Now, all I'm gonna say is this: they better get their act together, okay, before October comes, because there's a team in Atlanta right now that's going to bring a little bit of intensity. So you either better get used to what Bieniemy is bringing, or it's going to be a long, long season. Okay, just putting that out there.
Yeah. Yeah, they're going to have to match that intensity at some point, or it's going to be tough for them. So
Kevin, have that game as a loss for the Falcons, on the schedule?
No, I picked that as a win. We got revenge because I think they've beaten us like the last 4 times we played. So that was my I had us losing to the Titans embarrassingly.
I had us losing to the Titans too. Actually,
that was my embarrassing loss.
You had us losing to the Bucks too. In fairness,
yeah, but that's okay.
It's not only that they lost to Washington, it's the manner that they lost to Washington, at least the last 2 games, which is left a very bad taste in my mouth. So they own one for sure.
Yeah, no, we got to get over the Washington
throw Taylor Heineke in.
There you go.
Was taking revenge games apparently. Like he cooked the Falcons both times he played here.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, well, why not? Play the hot hand at quarterback because I know this is just another way for you to push your anti-Ritter agenda on nonsense.
It's not an anti-Ritter agenda. I just want to see more deep passes.
I know.
Never mind. We'll talk about it in preseason if it comes up.
Yep. Yeah, if it happens. So hopefully it won't. But guys, thank you all so much for tuning in. Before we sign off, I do want to give you some updates. We will of course be doing our live play-by-play for the preseason game. So if you're interested, you could tune in. We'll probably be going live like 10 minutes or so before the game starts, and we'll take you through the whole thing once again. We'll have, official show, everything posted on that probably tomorrow. And then this is the last call for the Patron Fantasy League. So if you're interested in playing in those, they're forming right now. Make sure you sign up on Patreon and fill out the form on Patreon to get involved with that. Just make sure you do that sort of by the beginning of next week to make sure that we get you in a league, because after that, maybe too late. So this is your last call if you want to get it. And if you're a current patron that hasn't yet filled out the form, please do fill out the form. Even if you were in a league last year, please fill it out just for the bookkeeping stuff. And just make sure that your patron status is updated and everything so we can get you in the league and get that going. I know we're all excited about that. But yeah, guys, thank you so much for hanging out. There's finally content, easy hour. I'm sure there's even more we could have covered, but we'll leave that there. We'll leave some content, in the hopper. Before we take off, I want to thank, of course, Will McFadden, who had to take off early. He's at Will McFadden, host of Bleav in Falcons. Check out his stuff there. He's also written some great stuff for on training camp over at thefalcoholic.com as well. And we also have joining us Eric Robinson. He is at _Eric_Robinson on Twitter. What's your new title at ESPN now, Eric? Are you like a full producer?
I'm nowhere near being a producer.
Oh, okay.
I'm just a content associate at this point.
No. I thought you were the director of the network. Yeah.
He's the shot.
I still got a ways to go, guys.
You're working up. You got to climb the ladder.
Yeah, absolutely.
1% better every day. Yeah.
He's the shadow director of NFL Live. Like he pulled all the levers behind the scenes. So if ESPN ever does anything anti-Falcons,
I'm trying, man. I'm trying. And you know what? What's interesting though, in the last few production meetings, there's been some talk of the Falcons, which is encouraging. Normally it doesn't happen, but there's been some encouraging talk about the Falcons. So
normally Cowboys,
I'm trying, ladies and gentlemen. I'm trying to push the envelope. Like, hey, maybe we should talk about this team in Atlanta a little bit more. Just saying. I'm trying.
Push the propaganda. I'm all for it.
Yeah, and I was told by Eric that he had nothing to do with ESPN reaching out for my clips. So that was totally totally organic. So yeah.
It's a whole different building. I ain't got nothing to do with that.
Shout out to ESPN for actually reaching out, though. Very professional.
Yes. Very professional. Unlike some accounts that we had to put on blast. So, thankfully that was pretty much it. After we blasted that guy, I didn't see it again. So, hey, give credit, guys. 16 characters. Come on, it's not hard. Yeah. Well, again, thanks, Eric. And of course, we have co-host Adnan Ikic at Say Which Way. Adnan, anything you would like to plug before we sign off?
I'm in the middle of writing my Falcons franchise cornerstones article. I started that before camp, and I'm near the end of it. But then training camp kind of took all of my attention. So yeah, I'll plug that. That'll probably go in the next couple of weeks, I want to say. But also, I will plug our live show, preseason play-by-play on Friday. It's always a good time. It's one of the most fun shows that we do all year. Game against the Dolphins starts at 7 p.m. and we will take you through every single play as if we were your broadcasting team, because I don't care what anyone says. I guarantee you we know more about this team than the guys on the CW, because we were at training camp every single day, and we watched all of these guys every single day, and we will be able to tell you a lot about those guys in the nether regions of the depth chart.
Nether regions. I love that. That's great. That's great. Yeah, I'm working on the quarterback, monikers. I think we're gonna go with like taking him to the Woodside or something when Woodside comes in. So, we'll definitely workshop that and get you some good bits just in time for this preseason game. But yes, MM Moore. In case it's not clear, we will be live for the preseason game, play-by-play through the whole thing, starting at roughly 6:45, 6:50. And we'll have, hopefully the delay won't be super bad, but, because YouTube's gotten a little bit better, and I think the streaming services have gotten a little bit better, but, tie in Blue Chew with Woodside. Look, Blue Chew, hit me up, okay? The Blue Chew app was just for a month. It was a temporary thing. So Blue Chew, hit me up, if you want to restart that.
We mentioned Blue Chew a lot.
It became a thing, I think the Blue Chew app was very popular. I hope that, for those that were availing themselves of Blue Chew services, that it was a positive interaction for all involved. So, but yeah, guys, thanks so much for hanging out with us. Appreciate everyone. We are almost there. We just got a couple preseason games to get to, and then week one will be here before you know it. So, guys, thank you so much. I'm Kevin, I at Falcoholic. Kevin, follow the show at Falcoholic Live. Check us out on Patreon. Check out the community Discord server and more. We'll see you guys next time. See you Friday night for the first preseason game for the Atlanta Falcons. Can't wait. See you then, guys. Have a great night.